If you don't make at least $140,000 a year, you are now officially below the new real poverty line. Congratulations, you're poor. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving, because if you thought you didn't have anything to be thankful for, well, now you do. You're not crazy. Things have gotten a lot more expensive, and you're not entitled for feeling poor. Congratulations, it's just real. This new data comes from an article written by Michael Green, and this article has been taking the internet by storm recently. In the article, he goes through the old way of measuring where the poverty line is and shows that if you look at how much stuff actually costs today and what people actually need to spend in order to survive, you need around $140,000 today. Again, to be above the poverty line. But to be honest, I didn't trust these numbers. For one, I couldn't find any citations on where the data for these costs came from. He cites conservative national average data and lists the main expenses of childcare at $32,000 per year, housing at almost $24,000, food at $14,000, transportation at $14,000, healthcare at almost $11,000, other essentials at $21,000, which nets you a required income of $118,000 after taxes. Once you add in the fact that taxes are going to be taken out of your income, you need $136,000 before taxes. And for reference, this is for a typical household where you have a married couple and 2 dependent kids. And at first glance, you might be a little bit suspicious of these numbers for the same reason I was. Number one, we have childcare at $32,000 as the number 1 largest expense. And so what I did was went through each of these line items to try and find what the real cost of these things are today. Not just for me, but national averages. The best source for childcare costs that I could find comes from CNBC because they break it down by state. Now in this article, they break it down not only by state, but also looking at infant care, they look at child care, and then they also show the income and the college tuition cost for each state. So if we isolate just the infant care and the child care costs from this list, put them all together and get the median, then we wind up with about $13,000 for child care and about $11,000 for infant care. In case you're wondering, that math was done for me by Grok. I'm certainly not going to do that by hand. So if you want to check my math, or in this case, Grok's math, be my guest. I also had Gemini run the numbers, and they put both of those numbers together and came up with a median cost of $12,300 together for both categories combined. Now, given the fact that this average number is for 1 child, and we are calculating the cost for a family with 2 kids, that would put our annual childcare cost at $24,000 per year, which is very expensive. But as you can see, it's about $8,000 less than the number we have in this article. So right off the bat, it's not looking too hot for these numbers, but don't worry, this is not probably going to go the way that you think it's going to go. All right, the next item on this list is housing, which he lists at $23,267 per year. Given the fact that we're trying to do math to find the poverty line, I am ignoring the current cost of mortgages, both for a new house and the average mortgage cost for existing homeowners. The reason why is because generally people who are buying houses are not contending with whether or not they are on the poverty line. If you are truly struggling to get by, you're renting, which means that rent prices matter a lot to you. Currently, according to Zillow, the average US rent in 2025 is $2,000 per month. Averages, remember, are skewed upwards by the top end, and so the median rent is going to be a little bit lower than this. I looked at rents in the city around my area, and $2,000 seemed pretty typical. Again, if you are struggling to survive, you're probably not going to be trying to live in the nicest area of town. You're probably going to be trying to save as much on rent as possible. But $2,000 is good for our list. $2,000 times 12 months per year puts us at $24,000 per year for housing costs. And that is virtually identical to the number that he has in his article, so we're good there. Next up on the list is food at $14,717. $14,717 comes out to well over $1,000 every single month. And my guess here is that this number includes going out to eat. Now, in my opinion, if you are struggling to survive, wondering whether or not you're on the poverty line, you're probably not going out to eat that much. The only way it makes sense for you to eat out, if you're talking purely financial, is if you can make more per hour than the amount it costs you to eat out. In other words, if I can make $50 an hour and I can save $12 by making my food myself and it takes me an hour, that makes no sense. I should just work instead and then pay somebody else to make my food for me. But again, we're talking about the poverty line here, which means we need to be relying almost exclusively on groceries. It will always make more financial sense to purchase the ingredients for food rather than purchasing the ingredients plus the real estate for somebody to dine, plus the labor for somebody to make that for you. So just on a cost basis, groceries are cheaper than eating out, no matter how you slice it. But what is that cost? Well, if we look at this article from NerdWallet, it says that the current average cost of groceries is about $500 per month for a household. I cross-checked this with data from the Federal Reserve's website, and they have food at home being $6,000 per year. Food at home for the Fed means groceries, and $6,000 per year is just about $500 per month. Now, to me, that seemed incredibly low. Back when I first started my career, my wife stayed home, so we had one income. I had just started off, I was making $40,000 per year. We survived on about $250 a month for groceries, and so seeing today, groceries being $500 a month seems pretty low given all the inflation we've had over the last 5 years. And we know this data can be skewed because of the way that prices and national averages are calculated. So if you can, it's better to go actually look at the prices of the things yourself, which is what I tried to do here to see if I could survive with my family on $500 per month. So if we go to Walmart, they have this button called Dinner Made Easy. So if we go to Walmart's website, they have this button called Dinner Made Easy, and they have a category here called Dinner for Your Budget, and you can find recipes for $5 per serving. Now they have tons of different recipes on here, but one that includes some protein is this green chili chicken casserole, which is estimated at $2.79 per serving. And when you click on it, it shows you what that cost per serving is, how many servings are included in the grocery basket that it gives for you, which it has everything itemized here, and the estimated total is $23. Now for a family of 4, 2 of them being children, 8 servings is probably enough for at least a meal and potentially leftovers for lunch the next day. Again, I could be wildly wrong about this, but given the fact that this includes 3 pounds of chicken, it seems fairly close to me. So if we take that $23 and multiply it by 30 days, we see $690 per month. Now again, this would assume that you would make this meal over and over again and eat the leftovers from it as lunch, and obviously that's ridiculous. I just wanted to see how close we could get with an average grocery bill, looking at an average type of meal from somewhere that's relatively cheap. And I'm sure if you were really trying, you could go cheaper, and I'm sure that most people can easily spend a lot more than this. But shopping for deals, looking for groceries in bulk, getting discounts does actually seem possible to survive with a family of 4 on just $500 per month if you really need to. That cuts the food budget estimate from $14,000 down to $6,000 per year, in line with federal national data. Now, the next item on this list is transportation that he has at $14,828. Now, transportation here is going to include the cost of the car, which for many people is the debt payment on the car, plus insurance on that car, plus gas to actually get to work and back. And again, family of 4, 2 people working, so this is 2 cars here. So what I did was I went to Kelley Blue Book and I looked at the cost of the average used car sold in the United States, which currently, as of the time of this recording, is about $26,000. Now, if you are buying a used car for $26,000, that means it's relatively new. It's a couple of years old, which means it has at minimum a 20-year lifespan, but let's just say you need a new one of those used cars every 10 years, and there are 2 of you. That means you're spending roughly $50,000 every 10 years on upgrading your cars. Saving up for that instead of getting a loan, because that's gonna be more expensive because of the interest. If you save up for that and then buy those cars in cash, that means you need to save approximately $5,200 per year. And that will give you enough to upgrade to a new used car every 10 years. The average cost of car insurance in America according to usnews.com, is a little over $2,000 per year. And according to fool.com, the average household spends about $200 per month on gas, which is about $2,400 per year. So for transportation, including the cost of getting a new car every 10 years, car insurance for 2 cars, and gas for 2 cars, we're a little over $11,000 per year. Compare that with his transportation bill of $14,000, and we are pretty darn close. Next up on the list, he has healthcare costs at $10,567. Again, I don't know where this data came from because the average family's health insurance premium in the United States today is $27,000. That's right, per year, $27,000, which is almost triple what he has here for the healthcare budget. Now, other essentials he has at $22,000. That's just for things like clothes and random maintenance and expenses and probably your phone bill and all the other things that go along with just living, bringing his required income to $118,000 after taxes and $136,000 before taxes. Just to recap, the numbers I was able to find are $24,000 for childcare, $24,000 for rent, $6,000 for groceries, $5,000 for your car purchases, $4,000 for car insurance, $2,400 for gas, $27,000 for health insurance, and I have $20,000 for other. That brings our grand total to $112,000 after taxes. So obviously on some of the categories, I think the true expense is a little bit less than what he said. Others, I think it's a little bit more, but $112,000 after taxes is pretty dang close to his $118,000 after taxes. But here's the next piece that I don't understand where it came from, because if you look at what it takes to actually bring home that amount after taxes, you're looking at over $152,000. If as a married couple with 2 dependents, you make $152,000, you're gonna pay about $11,000 in FICA taxes, which means you're gonna have $140,000 left over after FICA. Your standard deduction will reduce your taxable income by about $30,000, leaving about $110,000 in taxable income. You're gonna pay almost $14,000 of federal income taxes on that $110,000. You're gonna get $4,000 of that back from your 2 children's child tax credit, which means you're gonna end up paying $9,900 in federal income taxes. Assuming a 4% state income tax, you're gonna be paying another $4,400 on top of that, which means to be left over with $112,000 after taxes, you need to start off with $152,000. And again, I had Grok do the calculations for me because I'm not a CPA. So needing $152,000 before taxes to be left with $112,000 after taxes might be wrong, but in my experience, it seems a lot more close to reality. And if there's any of you out there starting off with $132,000 and you're left with $118,000 after all taxes, you either have a really good CPA or an audit on the way. Which means, according to my calculations, if we're looking at the poverty line the same way that he is, the poverty line's actually at $152,000 per year. So if you're not making $150,000 a year, married with 2 kids, you're poor, you're broke. Congratulations. The line in the sand has been arbitrarily drawn. The system is rigged against you. They're making everything more expensive every year, and there's nothing you can do about it. And nobody is coming to save you. So the question is, now what? So what? How does this help you? It doesn't. Do you want to get ahead, or do you want to feel vindicated and justified in your own suffering that you can point the blame at somebody or society and say, I knew it, I'm not really doing that well? If you want to actually get ahead, unfortunately, it's up to you. But fortunately, it's up to you. It may not be your fault that you are poor, but it is your responsibility if you want to get rich, because nobody else is going to do it for you. So here's the thing about these categories: childcare, rent, groceries, cars, health insurance. This is normal spending. In other words, it's average, it's typical, it's median. This is not evidence of a poverty line. This is evidence of most people spending more money. And given the fact that most people are really in debt and have no savings, it is not wise to take a look at that and say, hey, this is where the poverty line is. It's also not a financially smart idea to think, I need to spend more than this in every area in order to be able to be doing well, in order to get ahead. So what can you actually do? Well, number one, act poor, because technically you are. Life is expensive now, and you are struggling to get by. So act poor because you are, which means you don't have the luxury of spending the same amount of money that everybody else does on all the things that they spend money on. You're not trying to be normal. You're trying to get ahead. You need to act with aggressive urgency, because every day you don't get further ahead, you're falling further behind due to inflation. It is time to violently attack the situation you're in. So first up on the list is childcare at an average of $24,000 per year. Eliminate it. I will show you how in a moment and why it makes financial sense, but this is first up on the chopping block. Next up, rent at $24,000 per year. You can likely do a little bit better, but it's not going to drastically move the needle. Next up, groceries at $6,000 per year. In all honesty, what we're going to talk about here, this amount might actually go up a little bit to $7,000, $8,000 a year. That's okay. Next line, used car, averaging $5,000 per year for 2 cars every 10 years. That's if you're shopping at a used car dealer and getting a $26,000 car every 10 years, which is basically a new car. You're poor. Don't do that. That will keep you poor. It took me about 5 minutes to go on Craigslist and find this 2013 Toyota RAV4 for $9,500. It only has 60,000 miles on it, and it's a Toyota, so it's gonna go another 260,000 miles from here, with little to no maintenance or repairs necessary along the way. So right off the bat, that car costs less than half of what most people are paying for their used cars. And if you really want to get aggressive, here is a Toyota Camry, which is a 2002 for only $2,800, and that's before you try and negotiate them down. Yes, it has 250,000 miles on it, but it works perfectly. It's a Toyota Camry. You're gonna have to fix some things on it for sure, but it's gonna cost you a lot less than 10 grand for the other one, and it'll never cost you anywhere near $26,000 like the other one. Old cheap cars, even if they require maintenance and repairs, will always be cheaper, especially because the insurance and everything will also be cheaper on those. Remember, we are violently attacking your own poverty, which means we have to sacrifice what we want right now for what we really want in the future. And that might mean driving a car that sounds a little bit weird or might not be as fast, and you might need to take in to the mechanic a couple of times. And I found these literally on the first page of searching the first time. If you put any effort at all into this, you can find a beater for next to nothing. Car insurance stays the same, gas stays the same, and health insurance is the next one on the chopping block at $27,000 per year. This is absolutely insane, and in today's day and age, it is unnecessary. More people now than ever are canceling their health insurance because number one, they pay an obscene amount in insurance premiums, and number two, when they go to get their medicine, when they go to get their healthcare, they're spending a lot of money for those anyway. They're hitting their deductibles or their out-of-pocket maxes almost every single year. And more people now than ever are realizing if you just go to the doctor and tell them you don't have insurance, even if you still do, they'll give you a cash pay option, which is cheaper than going through your insurance. So that's one way to save money. The second way is to just cancel your health insurance, because guess what? A lot of times your claims get denied anyway. A lot of times they bill you for out of network when it was really in network, but there was one doctor walking around on the floor who was out of network and they never told you, so they bill the whole thing as out of network. It's a scam and it's unnecessary. And for those of you wondering what happens if something catastrophic, some crazy illness, a car accident or cancer happens to you, that's where crowd-funded companies are now coming in. This is not a recommendation and I am not affiliated. This is just an example. This company called Crowd Health. You can get covered for a family of 4 for $315 per month, and that will cover any of your medical expenses beyond $15,000 per incident. This is what catastrophic health insurance plans were supposed to be, and companies like this have like a 98, 99% coverage ratio. And since we're budgeting and trying to save money, we're gonna take that $20,000 down to $12,000 per year, which gives us about $1,000 per month for incidentals. Adding up our new categories, no childcare, rent groceries, cheaper cars, and cheaper health insurance, we need only, adding up our new categories of eliminating childcare, drastically reducing health insurance, decreasing car prices, we now need only $53,000 after taxes. Now, that is a big difference. Again, we're eliminating things like childcare and reducing health insurance and getting cheaper cars. That's not not going to be something that is going to put you on the streets. That is giving up what I would consider privileges or luxuries if you have the income to afford them. And just by giving up those things, we're taking our expenses down to $53,000 per year. And if we need to be left over with $53,000 after taxes, we need to start off with $73,000. Now, there's not as much of a difference here because things like tax credits make a bigger percentage impact on your income when your total income is lower. So starting off now with $73,000, we're left with $53,000. And if you can make $153,000 before taxes with 2 people, you can definitely make $73,000 before taxes with 1 person. Now, you still might be looking at that and thinking, well, that'd be nice. I wish I could make $73,000. And the answer is actually no, it is necessary. If you're not there yet, you need to make it your absolute only #1 priority to get there. Because again, every day you don't get further along towards that goal, you're actually slipping farther behind. So I talked about how to do this, and that is by going down to 1 income. You have to eliminate childcare, which is the largest expense, by having one of you stay home. Because the reality is when both parents are working, your expenses in every category are going to go up, and you get new categories like childcare added on. You don't have somebody at home taking care of all of the things that cost money, like grocery shopping, going for deals, coupon clipping, making food. All of those things you have to outsource if you are both earning money. And the reality is those childcare expenses last 5 years. After the first 5 or 6 years, your kids are going to school. And so it's not like one of you is going to lose out on ever earning income. You're saying, okay, for the next 5 years, we're going to buckle down. It is difficult, but it is definitely possible. This is not something that was reserved for people 100 years ago. When my wife and I had our first kid, she stayed home. I was making $40,000 per year. We lived in a $900 per month apartment, and we spent $250 per month on groceries. We had no car payment. The car we bought cost us $4,000. It was an old 98 Toyota 4Runner. We had no internet. If we needed internet on something like our iPad, we would hotspot our phone to it, and we made it work. And I know things have gotten more expensive, but this was only 2014, so it wasn't that long ago. In fact, I went and double checked the places that we lived, and the place that we lived originally, that was $900 a month, is now renting for around $1,500 per month. Another nicer apartment we moved into later that was around $1,200 a month is now renting for around $1,700 per month. And I live in a very normal city. The harsh reality is, if you want the results that most people don't have, you have to do things that most people don't do. And that means when your friends call you up and say, hey, would you like to go out and get beers tonight? You say, sorry, we did that last week, and my monthly budget for beers with the guys is gone. Call me again in 3.5 weeks. It means when your in-laws ask you to come on vacation with them, you say, sorry, we have budgeted for 2 vacations this year, and we don't have room to afford a third. You either sacrifice what you want right now, or you sacrifice what you really want later. It's a sacrifice either way. In other words, in life, you can choose the pain of discipline, or you can choose the pain of regret, but suffering either way. So you might as well apply your suffering in a way that gets you what you really want. And by the way, this wasn't the first time me and my family had to go through financial hardships. When my wife and I first got married, actually, we had a ton of debt. We used her entire income to pay off our debt within the first year, which was hard. We had to live in a crazy bad part of town to do it. But because of that discipline, it allowed us to be used to living on a smaller amount of money so that when my son was born, she could stay home and it didn't feel as crazy of a transition to us. Later on through my career, I started making a ton of money and we saved and invested a lot of it. And that gave me the ability to quit my job and start Heresy Financial. And it took me a 1.5 years before I made enough money running this business to be able to pay our bills. A 1.5 years. That would not have been possible if we wouldn't have had the habits and the discipline of saving and investing before when my income was large. And during that entire time, the first 1.5 years running this business, we made no money. We shopped the sales. We looked for discounts. We didn't splurge. We weren't traveling. We were sacrificing in the moment in order to build something that we truly wanted later on. Now, here's the hard truth that it's the next kind of level that most people struggle with getting over from here. It's the biggest thing that people who follow Dave Ramsey and the FIRE people struggle with. You cannot coupon clip your way to wealth. You cannot save your way to becoming rich because there is a floor underneath your expenses. The thing that builds wealth is the difference between your expenses and your income. And so if you stay stuck at making $73,000 per year, you're not going to be able to save a significant amount of that to be able to invest to grow your wealth. There's a floor under that. You might be able to save a few $1,000s per year, but the higher you grow your income and the lower you keep your expenses the whole way, the faster you can invest. In fact, investing 20% of your income at $73,000 per year, you're only saving $14,000 per year. But if you're making, let's say, $300,000 per year and you're saving just 10%, which is half the percentage, well, you're saving $30,000 per year, which is double what the lower income person is being able to invest. In other words, income is a far more powerful tool for building wealth than expenses. You have to do both, but you can't do it without a higher income. It is a non-negotiable, which means you're going to have to get that license. You're going to have to get that certification. You're going to have to get the experience. You're going to have to build those skills. If you want somebody to pay you $200,000 or $300,000 per year, you need to have skills that are that much or more valuable to the employer, because they have to pay your employment taxes and everything, and they're not going to hire you unless it makes the business more money. Which means if you want somebody to pay you 300 grand, you have to be worth at least 500 grand to them. Those are some serious skills that you're going to have to build, and it takes hard work, and most importantly, it takes time to get that good at anything. It might even take you years to build those skills. And it took me a couple years to get back to a couple $100,000 per year because I had to build new and more skills. Now I'm doing 7 figures per year because I built the skills to be able to do that. And I'm currently working on building the skills necessary in order to get to the next level. It takes time and hard work. But guess what? The time will pass anyway. Don't look at the 3 to 5 year to 10-year roadmap ahead of you and feel discouraged, because that time will happen anyway. Might as well wake up 5 years from now closer to your goals with more income and more skills, instead of throwing your hands up in the air and waking up in the same place you are today. Get after it. It's up to you. You may be in the poorhouse today, but nobody is keeping you there. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Make it happen. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.